Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Fox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullrood.
Welcome, everybody, to the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. We are recording. My name is Ryan Skullrood. I am your host tonight, and with me tonight is our buddy Greg. Go ahead and say hi, Greg.
Good evening, everybody. Live for the first time. Really excited about this, Ryan. Very, very excited about where this could go.
Yeah, this should be a whole lot of fun. For those of you who have never joined one of our or never listened to one of our podcasts, this is the first time we are actually going live on Facebook. And you will actually be able to see that as well on our website, skullkingfootball.com. And so we are live. This is fun. So tonight, the agenda, we're going to go over some news and notes, and then after that, Greg, being our quarterback guru on the website and our quarterback writer, him and I are going to talk a little bit about our personal rankings, where we have different players, and kind of how we rank them out. So if there's nothing else, let's go ahead and get going. We're going to start off with some news and notes, and to get going first, our news and notes are brought to you by Bluehost. Bluehost is the /1 recommended web hosting company by WordPress.org. Every account features one-click WordPress installation. They have trained in-house experts available 24/7 and a help center full of guides, video tutorials, and more to help you build your website. They have a 30-day money-back guarantee, and Bluehost will also give you over $150 in advertising from Google, Bing, and other leading sites to help you grow your business. We have been more than happy with our experience in switching over to Bluehost. And so if you need more information, go ahead and go to bluehost.com/track/skullking. That's bluehost.com/track/skullking to find out more. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the news and notes over the last week. You were not with us last week. We will go ahead and start with this. Jerick McKinnon opened the Vikings OTAs, handling most of the first-team reps in the running back corps. The one guy that no one expects to really get any time with Latavius Murray and was it the drafting of Dalvin Cook?
Dalvin Cook, right.
We are seeing Jerick McKinnon getting most of the first-team reps. Do you think this has more to do with the fact that one's a rookie and the other one his other competition is coming off an ankle injury?
Yeah, I mean, I would think it has more to do with the other two guys to be the guys who are going to actually carry the ball when it matters, which is also what's going to matter to fantasy owners. I mean, Jerick McKinnon he's had his chance, and if he was really the guy, they wouldn't have brought in two new guys ahead of him. So right now he's filling a role, in camp for those purposes, but I wouldn't read more into it than that.
All right. Moving on, Marcus Mariota is participating at Titans OTAs and appears to be ahead of schedule. This is very promising for Titans fans with the injury that he suffered at the end of the last season. I want to say he and Derek Carr both got injured the same week, or it was back-to-back weeks or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, it should be interesting to see how he performs this next year, especially with the addition of Corey Davis as well as Taywan Taylor as wide receiver targets for him.
Yeah, I think this year is going to be a big year for Mariota. Obviously, he's going to, I think, probably be one of the hottest names going into the draft. It'll be interesting to talk about the tier system later and where he falls, because this was certainly my first pass at what the quarterbacks look like this year, and I was surprised at how high I kind of wanted to put him.
Okay. Moving on, Redskins coach Jay Gruden has said that Josh Doctson has been impressive. Remember, Josh Doctson hardly even played at all last year, was on the injured reserve for most of the season with an Achilles injury that he suffered, I want to say, in OTAs or rookie camp. So that, we haven't really seen much from him, so it'll be interesting to see how he fits in with the addition of Terrell Pryor, with Jamison Crowder, who's already there for Kirk Cousins to throw to. Well, we'll move past this. I mean, there was a report from the Huffington Post that said that Colin Kaepernick wants to be a Seahawk. Colin Kaepernick has, most Seahawks fans are just absolutely just not even wanting this to happen at all. Even my wife was like, "No, this can't happen. No, this cannot happen. He cannot be a Seahawk." So that's the general consensus of most Seahawks fans when it comes to Colin Kaepernick. And for me, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the kneeling during the national anthem or any of that. For me, I think he would be an okay backup. I despise the San Francisco 49ers and anything that has to do with them. So, so that really sums it up for me. So, oh, and by the way, Colin Kaepernick actually did have his meeting with the Seahawks and is left without a contract. So it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So, moving on. You have something to say, Greg?
No, I was just saying that I believe that I said it must have been 5-ish weeks ago that the place that he's most likely to land would have to be Seattle. It's the only place that made sense for him. Kind of following the stance that he made. I mean, those are sister cities if you ever had them between San Francisco and Seattle. And so I thought he would fit in well there. And I'm surprised he left without a contract. To be honest, I do think he would be a capable backup. And at that point, if he is signing as a backup, he is signing for a lot less than he thought he was going to get when he declined his option, and left San Francisco. It's his fault he's in the situation in the first place.
Yeah.
Not take the kneeling out of it. He managed his own contract at the end. So, for everybody who wants to say the guy was blackballed and whatnot, ultimately, he made his choice.
Yep. All right. Moving on. Dolphins coach Adam Gase tells reporters that Ryan Tannehill, with his knee injury, has no restrictions. I actually can't remember what exactly was Tannehill's injury last year with his knee. I don't remember exactly what it was. Honestly, he's back looking good. I'm still hesitant to take Ryan Tannehill as a quarterback for fantasy leagues. I will be more than happy to take Jarvis Landry as his number one receiver because it's the only safety blanket he seems to ever want to throw to. So,
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, he's a backup in consistently, right? I mean, heading into this season, in most leagues, he's going to be a backup, at most, or a spot starter. So, I don't have a lot of expectation necessarily for Tannehill this season as far as him growing by leaps and bounds over what we've already seen.
Yeah,
knee injury or not.
He would be a middle of the road QB2 when it comes to maybe a 2-quarterback league or something like that, in my opinion. So, the Bears are signing former Giants wide receiver Victor Cruz to a 1-year deal. How do you feel about that? Are you still a Bears fan, or is it a former Bears fan now?
Again, as of right now, I am not on speaking terms with the Bears. I did hear about this Victor Cruz stuff, which is really only fitting. I mean, they do need somebody to come in there and try to catch the ball, but if Victor unfortunately couldn't make it happen in New York with that surrounding, cast, right, coming back from that injury, I don't think you're more likely to have that happen with Beaker and the gang, in Chicago. So, what does it mean? Well, he might be the best wide receiver in Bears history when all is said and done, but realistically, that's climbing a 3-foot step ladder. Let's only pat ourselves on the back so much, with that. When you look at the, history-making receiving yards that have come out of, Bear wide receivers, joint competing with Brandon Marshall, for God's sake. So he's not going to beat Brandon Marshall, but he'll probably end up number 2 on the Bears' all-time list.
All right. Dennis Pittis says nobody is making more plays than Brashad Perriman in Ravens camp. I'm still staying the freak away from Brashad Perriman until, if someone else wants to take a shot on him in the draft, well, they're more than I'm more than happy to let someone else play with that fire, or try to win a lottery ticket. I will let him sit, and if he has 3 consecutive games that looks like he's going to do it, yeah, I might pick him up for the bench. But then someone else will have already picked him up, so I'm staying the crap away from Brashad Perriman.
Right. I mean, how often have we heard his name on the mini hype train this early in the football non-season, only to be rewarded with nothing but garbage? So, he's the last call at the end of the night, right? Dim lighting, lots of drinks. Maybe you want to give it a once over, but you're better off passing. Just go home. Just get an Uber. Just call it a night.
All right. DeShone Kizer is, quote, on the fast track, unquote, to winning the starting job per the Cleveland Plain Dealer. Well, all he has to fight with for that job is Cody Kessler. And I guess you can say Brock Osweiler, but still.
Well, Hugh Jackson, I mean, I just read a piece today where he was singing the praises of Brock Osweiler. So, I don't know what to make of any of that. I mean, it's sheer lunacy to have Kizer even talked about like that. You're already messing with his ego if he's reading stuff like that. So God willing, he does not. And, hopefully he does not see the field this season if he's going to even have a fighting chance of being an NFL quarterback.
Yeah. Again, I go back to the conversation that I had with Brock Ewart. He saw him as a third-round project that will need time to really develop his skills a little bit more. Yes, he has a cannon of an arm, and he was able to throw all over Syracuse, but apparently everyone was able to throw all over Syracuse. So, moving on. I'm doing my best to stay away from the Cleveland situation in fantasy. I mean, there may be a couple guys I may take a flyer on, but that's it. The Boston Herald's Karen, or I'm not even going to bother trying to say her last name, reports that Rob Gronkowski with his back was a full go during OTAs. It's good to see him back. I'm still not taking him nearly as early as everyone wants to take a tight end.
I would shut Gronkowski down now. I would put him on a light yoga program from here through the 4th week of preseason, and make sure he has a freshly starched jersey for week 1. What the F does he need to be doing in OTAs? I mean, you can teach him to be bigger in a bigger matchup problem, or learn how to catch a ball from Tom Brady. What does he have to learn how to do? Leave him alone. Set him down. Bill, set him down.
If anything in OTAs, all he should be doing is the light workouts and stretches to make sure that he's limber enough and his back is in good enough shape to not screw it up any worse.
Yeah, that's at most.
All right. Kirk Cousins stated that he wants to get Terrell Pryor, quote, as many touches as possible. I love the sound of that, being a fan of Terrell Pryor, having him on most of my fantasy teams last year. I think that this bodes really well for him. I saw another report, I want to say earlier today, that with Pryor's speed, I want to say at his pro day he ran like a 4.38. The Washington Redskin quarterbacks have had problems getting the ball deep enough to Terrell Pryor on the deep ball. They can't get. I mean, they cannot get it out to him. So, like I said, I think this only bodes well for Terrell Pryor as a prospect. Depending on where you can get him, I think this will mean good things for Kirk Cousins having a deep threat, and as long as Terrell Pryor can stay healthy. Unlike what Deshaun Jackson's been able to do the last couple of years, I think that could really, really be great for both of them, especially with the other weapons that Cousins has at his disposal.
Yeah, I think this is the last year that people got the discount on Terrell Pryor. I think the price is definitely going to go up after playing a season with Kirk Cousins. I think it only benefits that team. I think people have really been sleeping on the kind of talent that he actually has for that position, especially as a deep threat.
Yeah. And he showed it so much even in the preseason last year. When with RG3 and Kessler and everyone throwing to him. I mean, everyone's been underthrowing him the last couple of years. So,
Yeah.
if Kirk Cousins can get the ball out there to him, it should be a huge year for Terrell Pryor.
Mm-hmm.
LaShawn McCoy is excited about his potential role in the passing game under new offensive coordinator Rick Dennison. For me, I was down on LaShawn McCoy going into last year just because of all of the hamstring issues he had suffered the year before, and just had been inconsistent in his health for the last third of the season going into the fantasy playoffs. Had a couple issues this last year. I think he only missed the one game at Seattle. Was the only game I think that he actually missed this past year. But Shady's getting up there in years. I think it's best for him, for his role, to move more towards the passing game for his health. He's still a beast when it comes to being able to run the ball, get out in open space. I just don't know how much punishment his body will be able to take over the next couple of years going between the tackles, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just looking at him, he's RB2 in a platoon system at RB2, right? It's a matchup-based guy. Ideally, you have an every week number one guy, and then your number two, he's somebody that you're splitting based on matchup and health, right? That's how I would analyze him, going in. I mean, to your point, he's not a guy who's going to be able to continue to take a beating. He never has been that guy, to be quite honest. And he's certainly not going to become that guy now. So his best usage would be in the passing game.
Yeah, looking at his overall ranking, I think I still have him as a top 10 running back. I think I have him right around, I want to say 4 or 5 for now, based on just what we know coming out of last year. I mean, we haven't seen much, so for now, I still have him ranked pretty high. ESPN Seahawks reporter Sheil Kapadia wrote that 60 receptions is not a stretch for sophomore CJ Prosise. Quote, if he stays healthy. See, that's the big problem with Seahawks running backs, is if they can stay healthy. The reason that the Seahawks drafted CJ Prosise out of Notre Dame was because of his receiving ability. If he stays healthy, I could see 60 receptions for him, because he's not only going to be lining up as a third down back, but he's also going to be lining up in the slot in 3, 4, or probably in 4 and 5 wide situations. So again, I think this is more of a no duh. Really, I mean, he's going to get that again if he can stay healthy, and that's the big question with this.
Right. Well, I mean, he certainly showed, flashes of brilliance last year when he was healthy. And so it would be a realistic prediction if he can stay on the field. But, like you said, health is the issue. So that's going to be the ultimate determining factor. But he's got the talent to play the role that the Seahawks need him to play.
Yeah. All right, Bears QB Mark Sanchez, butt fumble, is expected to miss the remainder of offseason workouts due to knee injury suffered in camp yesterday, but he is expected to be ready for actual training camp. That's non-news. I mean, it's because they've got Beaker and Mitchell ahead of him on the depth chart anyways, so he's basically there to fill a spot and throw passes to wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, that's the excuse for why a guy that you just drafted is already above the guy you just signed in the offseason.
All right. Larry Fitzgerald said that third-round wide receiver Chad Williams reminds him of Anquan Bolden in some ways, which is, I mean, coming from Fitzgerald is high praise for the third-round rookie out of Grambling. For me, again, watching some of Chad Williams' tape, I thought he was more of like a fifth-round pick. Obviously, Arizona loves what they see in Williams. I want to say he's around 6'1", about 210, 215 pounds, so he has good size to him. He's got great speed. And so I think their main focus was for him to eventually be the heir apparent to Larry Fitzgerald, and getting this kind of praise already in OTAs from Fitzgerald, I think speaks very well of Chad Williams.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, if he is anywhere near the player that Anquan Bolden has been over his career, then Cardinals just got a great pick. So I've heard a lot of the same excitement down here about the wide receiver corps and what the Cardinals expect this season, going in. So that is exciting news. Let's see if it actually plays out.
Yeah. All right. Let me pull up. Here we go. The next one is, according to the Chicago Sun-Times, Adam Johns, Jordan Howard is noticeably slimmer than he was as a rookie. The Brother Bear is a bit slimmer this year. Let's see. What was last year? He was 6'1", 225. If he's, I mean, what's he going down to? 215?
Yeah, I mean, he looked pretty slim running the ball, last season. I mean, the way he runs, to me is reminiscent of watching Walter Payton style wise. I think part of it is build oriented. Walter Payton wasn't a very big guy; he's a little taller, a little bit leaner. So I don't see where he has the room to lose weight though, at all.
Yeah, that concerns me just a little bit. And it could be that he's maybe taking off some water weight to try to build up a little more muscle going into camp and working through camp. But again, for a guy his size, I personally wouldn't want him losing much more. If he's losing much more after that, I may move him down a little bit in my rankings, just because when guys especially running backs, when they particularly try to lose weight in order to slim down and be faster, they tend to get injured easier.
Right. So. Absolutely.
All right. The Miami Herald's Armando Salguero says that, here we go with this nonsense again. Julius Thomas is, quote, going to be a thing this year. Dolphins have, quote, multiple plays tailored for him.
Multiple, as in more than two.
Okay. For those of you who haven't heard my take on Julius Thomas, I was one of those lucky guys who drafted Julius Thomas in his breakout year with Peyton Manning, and reaped the benefits of that for 2 years. Unfortunately, his injury history over the last couple years also has been a problem. It did not help him in Jacksonville. And let's be honest, he did have Blake Bortles throwing to him, who could only seem to find the two Allens on deep balls the last couple years. And even last year, he wasn't doing that all that well. Julius Thomas has been his most productive when Peyton Manning is throwing him the ball. So therefore, my conclusion is that Julius Thomas will have a great season this next year if a 5 years younger Peyton Manning comes out of retirement and is the one quarterbacking for the Miami Dolphins. Ryan Tannehill is okay, but again, his security blanket has always been Jarvis Landry. The last 3 years, if he needs to get someone the ball, it's Jarvis Landry. Adam Gase is a great offensive coordinator, but he still has Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback, and that's where I'm pulling down a little bit on Julius Thomas as being a thing for this next year.
I think at most, if things go well, he becomes one of those legitimate red zone threat tight ends, but he's not going to rack up a ton of receptions and he's not going to rack up a lot of yards simply because of, again, Ryan Tannehill. I mean, he's not shown anything to indicate he's going to lead the kind of offense that is going to have a tight end be productive in a significant way from a fantasy standpoint. So he's a tight end too, at best, I think, again, this year.
Well, and let's not, I mean, you weren't here for this last week, but we mentioned in last week's podcast that the Dolphins coach, Adam Gase, said that Jay Ajayi could get as many as 350 carries this season. They're going to be intent on running the ball. So that automatically cuts short the amount of pass plays. Again, you're looking at your main targets are going to be Jarvis Landry and Devontae Parker are going to be your two guys there. After that, there's going to be a little bit left over for maybe Julius Thomas, but again, their intent to run the ball is already going to cut into that kind of production for Julius Thomas as it is.
Right. Yeah, I agree. There's always so many opportunities, only so many balls to go around.
All right, so moving on, Corey Coleman will be out for a little while after taking a spill at one of last week's OTAs. From what I heard, he actually fell on a football and hurt himself. So at the same time, I guess Hugh Jackson has said that he wants Corey Coleman to be his number one. I'm still waiting to see how that's going to work out, considering he can't stay healthy either. So, they've got Corey Coleman who can't stay healthy, and and who's there? They got Josh Gordon who can't stay sober. So it's really looking great for wide receivers for the Browns.
Yeah, that's kind of the one hole in the whole Browns resurgence is who's going to be catching the ball, this year. So,
David Njoku at tight end. That's about it.
Yeah, that is about it. As of right now, he's your go-to guy. At least that's what you got to think going in. So that means he's going to get his butt handed to him all season long.
Pretty much. All right, and finally, Browns coach Hugh Jackson says he's committed to running the ball more in 2017.
That's because he doesn't have wide receivers. We just touched on that.
we just went on that. So
thanks, Hugh.
Is it Isaiah Crowell or is it Duke Johnson again? In my opinion, this is not talent-wise they are not this, but in terms of functionality, they are very much like a couple years ago with Jeremy Hill running the ball in Cincinnati and Gio being able to run the ball a little bit and catch the ball out of the backfield. Gio Bernard. Gio Bernard is kind of would be my comparison to Duke Johnson, while Crowell would be more the comparison to Jeremy Hill. Neither one of them can keep the ball off the ground either. So I think the comparison works perfectly. They can run the ball more, but they still have Kaiser, Kessler, and Osweiler as their quarterbacks, and no wide receivers. So tell me they're not going to stack 9 in the box or 10 in the box, for crying out loud, and say, beat us.
How many can you put in the box exactly?
11.
You can't put 11. I just want to check. You can't put 11 in the box because it might be worth it. Maybe it's just a regional thing, like Ohio and like backfields that stink. You can't get anything consistent, which is I mean, I think that's just an accurate read. Right now, Cleveland. I think Cleveland fans have a lot to be excited about overall because of the draft and how much they got for the future. But just realize there are gaping holes on that team from a talent perspective that's being matched up with hopeful talent.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. So that does it for our news and notes section. Now we're gonna move on into our. Let's see if I can pull up the right page. There we go. We're going to move into our quarterback section and talk about kind of our rankings and tiers. Our next section is brought to you by Vox DFS Firelines. They are our title sponsor for our podcast. Vox DFS Firelines is one of the industry leaders in consulting and providing DFS lines for just about any sport on any platform. Doesn't matter if you play MLB, NASCAR, NFL, MLS, PGA. Whether you prefer playing on Yahoo, DraftKings, FanDuel, there's a couple others I know that they provide lines for as well. They have the lineup experts to help you pull in the cash. Earlier this month, one consultant's PGA lines won $65,000. 60 grand of that was for finishing second in a single contest. That lineup was 2 points from winning the whole thing at 100 grand. So their lineups are usually spot on. Their top MLB consultant has multiple streaks of cashing 10 days in a row. So the consultants will also teach you bankroll management, so you learn what contests to play and when, so you don't overextend yourself. So again, to find out more about them, go to voxdfs.com. That's VOKSDFS.com today, and tell them the guys from Skull King Football sent you over there. All right, so next, let's move on to. We're going to talk about our quarterbacks here, and let's go to. Let me pull up the rankings. Now we have the rankings right now on the website that we have. If you go to skullkingfootball.com and hit on the rankings tab, these rankings I did are my personal rankings for now. As of like 2 weeks ago. So I have not updated these with some of the news and just kind of re-examining some things in camps and everything. So this is what I've got so far. Greg, I know that you have, you kind of done some of your own rankings as well to prepare for this tonight. So, so why don't we go ahead and start off? For me, this is how I'm going through it and have started doing my rankings. And we'll start to do my drafts as well. And I'm going to start doing them tier-based. So instead of going an absolute ranking, this one's number 1, this one's number 2, if he's not available, I'm going to the next one. I'm going to start doing tier-based, and so more putting them in groups. So if any of these 3 guys are available, yeah, I may have my favorite, but if any of these 3 guys are available on my next pick, I'll pick one. So, you can do it. So if you have a guy maybe ranked a little bit higher than someone else, you've got them as a tier 2 instead of a tier 3. They're available when none of the rest of your tier 2 guys are, basing it that way. So, so why don't we go ahead and quickly get started? For me, in terms of tier 1, I have 3 quarterbacks. And I don't know if they'll be the same as you. So I'm going to start off. My 3 quarterbacks in Tier 1 are Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees. That's, for the most part, that's pretty much the consensus. Greg, I don't know what do you have as far as your Tier 1 goes?
So I really liked your list, and I think generally speaking, we're going to be pretty close on everything. This was my first pass taking a look at it, yesterday. So I'm sure, my thoughts will evolve on this, but one of the things that stood out to me, and this is the first time for me, is that for me, if I'm using that same system, and that's what I tried to do here, which was use it in tiers, this is the first time Drew Brees would not be in it. I would actually slide him down just based on what they've lost in the offseason with Brandon Cooks, what I saw having him on my team last season versus what I've experienced in the past and watching him play a lot last year. I think that he's going to be the top guy for me at tier 2. So I have Rodgers and Brady as basically in a class of their own. Personally, I go with Tom Brady simply because of what they're adding. To me, adding Brandon Cooks and a healthy Gronkowski outweighs adding Martellus Bennett. I think overall New England has made more strides, 4 more games for Tom Brady with everything he has. Age isn't an issue with that guy, so I have him as number 1. Rodgers is 2.
Yeah, I mean, I've got mine switched. Aaron Rodgers is 1, Tom Brady is 2, and with Tom Brady, I've heard another podcast say that one of their guys has Tom Brady ranked at like number 6 or 7. Just because of how well he performed last year with, I want to say his here, I've got it pulled up right here. Tom Brady, in terms of his TD to interception ratio,
28 to 4, right?
28 to 2.
I'm sorry, 28 to 2.
28 to 2.
That's insane. That's 2 more touchdowns per week for the other 4 weeks. That's 36 to what? 3?
3. Okay. Now what he was saying was that rate is unsustainable. I agree. I can see him, I can see him next year instead of 36-3, maybe going 35-6. That still puts him up there, and with how many yards he's going to have, how many completions. I have one league that I play in that you get a half point per completion for quarterbacks. It's a high-scoring league. Tom Brady is going to be one. Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Aaron Rodgers are the top 3 quarterbacks to go every year in that league. Tom Brady is still going to continue to throw. If in terms of their running game, yes, they have Mike Gillislee this year. They used LeGarrette Blount last year, but in terms of their running game is mostly short passes out of the backfield to James White and to Dion Lewis. That's their running game.
Yeah. I mean, he's I just don't see it. The guy is, no matter what year you look at, is generally going to be, a 3.5 to pushing 4-to-1 ratio on TDs to interceptions. I mean, his numbers are great. And if you're getting in a league like you're talking about, when you're getting points for completions, for Pete's sake, he's a no-brainer at that point.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I can still, and this is general, but Tom Brady, even if he doesn't finish as the number 2 quarterback, he'll finish in the top 5.
Guaranteed.
So, I mean, if you look at, he didn't finish at number 2, he finished at number 4. Man, you still got you still got a ton of value out of him. So
somebody really, Drew Brees or Matt Ryan has to have a monster year to unseat him from the top 2.
Yeah.
Monster year.
All right, so we've moved. We're going to move on from those. I mean, you had Drew Brees as a tier 2, the top guy in your tier 2. I have him as my 3rd guy in tier 1. So I mean, we're really at the same spot with Drew Brees. So moving on, next in tier 2 for me, and I'm sure there's going to be some disputes on this, and these aren't completely arranged for me in absolute this guy, then this guy, then this guy. Again, this is the group, and I may work on rearranging them. But in terms for me, tier 2, I have Matt Ryan, Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Derek Carr, and Eli Manning. So I've got 7 guys. So really, it's my top 10 are 2 different tiers. I maybe could have split it up a little bit more, but in terms of maybe a tier 2, I mean, how many guys did you have in there?
Well, in looking at the list and just. For me, I would vision tier 1, tier 2 as being all starting quarterbacks within a 10-team league, generally speaking. That's kind of my viewpoint. So I have 8 guys on this side.
Okay, so we're about the same.
Yeah, so we have 10 guys in our top 2 tiers, and it's the names that are flipping. The only one that I have, which is a big flip, and this is really the only other. I think difference worth noting between our lists is where Russell Wilson falls, because I don't think he's a tier 2 quarterback actually at all. I think with what he showed last year, if you look at the year before is the anomaly. If you look at what he's produced overall, last year might be low. The year before is way high. He's somewhere in the middle. Did they do anything to help the passing game? I don't see it. The wide receiving core that they have is, I think, subpar. For a quarterback that you have that much money invested in, it's subpar. It might work for Tom Brady, but it doesn't necessarily work for Wilson in terms of touchdowns. So I don't see him being able to crack 30 touchdowns again. I see him on a best season being 28, so I push him out of here. So my tier 2, I have Drew Brees, then Matt Ryan, Roethlisberger, physical ailments aside, then Andrew Luck, Derek Carr. I move Cam Newton up. And then the last 2 here are a toss-up. I have Eli Manning, then Phillip Rivers, but I really struggle with Kirk Cousins replacing one of those 2.
Yeah. In terms of my defense of Russell Wilson, this is, a lot of people say, well, you're just being a homer. Here's my deal with Russell Wilson. In terms of last season, yes, 2 years ago was a bit of an anomaly. They didn't have much of a choice but to throw the ball all over the place. I mean, when they had to rely on Christine Michael again to be their running back, there's issues. And so they had no choice but to throw the ball all over the yard. Last year, part of the problem was with Russell Wilson is he was not able to run the ball because of his injury, getting dinged up in week 1 and then getting dinged up again in week 2. The ankle in one and the knee in the other. Wasn't able to take either one of those braces off until it was like week 9 or 10 when they played the Patriots. So I do believe that hampered him, especially in terms of his running and being able to get out of the pocket to advance the ball. Last year, I want to say he had like a career low in terms of rushing yards. Do we actually have?
It did look low to me from what I just was looking at a second ago.
Yeah, let's see. In terms of rush yards, he was, where is he? Russell Wilson had only 259 rushing yards when in previous years he's had 400 plus. So in terms of rushing yards, that right there is going to bring him up a little bit. He'll have a couple more rushing touchdowns. I think that will help bring him up to that 30 mark. So while, again, I could rearrange those and I could very well put him at 9 or 10, I still think he, because of the dual threat ability, if he stays healthy, which, again, you could say Andrew Luck, putting him in Tier 2, if the offensive line can't protect him, he'll be a Tier 3, Tier 4 guy. So
right. Well, and I agree with that. There's one variable that's being overlooked with Russell Wilson, and I believe that is kind of the more off the field situation. He's got a lady now, and every once in a while, you see a lady come into a quarterback's life, and things don't go so swimmingly after that.
I guess we can talk to Tony Romo about that with Jessica Simpson.
Right. Exactly, or Carrie Underwood or everybody else who came along, and I just say that the caution flag to me is up when you see a slide in productivity and injuries associated with the appearance of a woman. Not to offend the ladies out there, to make this show in some way controversial, but you got to follow the clues that you're given, And sometimes those things got to be looked at. So I'm just saying here, if you have back-to-back seasons of this, I don't know. We might have a longer-term issue with Russell and where his focus really is.
Yeah. All right. Looking at, I did my rankings through Fantasy Pros and have them posted to the website. And looking at where I have people compared to where the quote-unquote experts have everyone, the expert consensus, I have Phillip Rivers at 7-ish, where the experts seem to have him at like 14. If you consider that they got 2 guards to help protect him and to help run the ball for Melvin Gordon, they gave him another weapon in terms of throwing the ball to, and Mike Williams. They're going to help. I think I can't remember if they added much to the defense, but I think that they have added enough weapons and enough help around Phillip Rivers to keep him healthy enough and not being on his back all the time to be able to produce the kind of numbers he needs. Now, again, it depends on if his wide receivers can stay healthy.
Right. So, I mean, I would agree with you. I mean, I think this is the bottom end of Tier 2 and the top end of, or even a decent chunk of Tier 3. These names are going to change a lot. Here's what doesn't happen. What doesn't happen is, barring injury, Roethlisberger, Ryan, or Breeze, or Luck, these guys generally aren't falling out of Tier 2, and I don't think neither is Derek Carr. Guys like Manning and Rivers are subject to be overtaken by the likes of a Cousins, a Prescott, Russell Wilson, who I had marked down. I have Stafford down at that level. Marcus Mariota, who I said I thought about earlier, as being a guy who could really jump up this year, and Jameis Winston. Carson Palmer even. I mean, that Tier 3 could easily be my Tier 2 by the end of the season, just based on how things play out from an injury standpoint.
Correct.
A couple bounces, and whatnot. Take out, Breeze, Ryan, and Roethlisberger. But, there's a real cluster of names that are down in there. And I think the ones that are most susceptible that are clinging to Tier 2 are the Mannings and the Rivers. And it's the Cousins, the Prescotts, Mariota. Those are the guys who are really, I think, starting to threaten that level. Because Carson Palmer can't threaten it anymore because this is last year, basically. Yeah. Matthew Stafford's not going to consistently stay there. Maybe Winston's another guy who goes in there. And I think Wilson's just, again, one of those borderline guys based on what we see happen this year. So, the top half, bottom half of those 2 tiers are really interesting, and that's going to change a lot, I think, going into the draft.
Yeah, the thing about Matthew Stafford, let's see if let me pull up his stats. There we go. If you look over the last few years with his stats, I mean, his passing attempts, you're looking at 634, 602, 592, 594. His passing yards, he has been over 4,200 the last 4 years. He had the 1 year that he threw for over 5,000. He throws for a bunch of touchdowns. Last year, he only threw for 24. In my opinion, with Stafford, that had partially to do with the sprained middle finger on his throwing hand that he played through. I think Stafford still in most leagues still ended up as like the number 10 quarterback, and I think Stafford still can do that. With adding, who they at? Michael Roberts, the tight end out of Toledo, who's a massive target to use down in the red zone, along with Eric Ebron. They added Kenny Golladay, who I want to say is like a 6'4", 215, 220 pound wide receiver. So they've added some targets for him. I think the thing that hurts, I guess you could say it may even help him that they didn't draft a running back. So he still has Amir Abdullah and Theo Riddick, who mainly he's going to be throwing to. So, really it's Matthew Stafford more is going to end up in that upper end tier 3, lower end tier 2, right around that 10-11 mark, simply because he's going to have to throw the ball a lot. A lot of people say that that's why Drew Brees always finishes so high, is because he's always throwing the ball a ton. He throws for 5,000 yards every year because he's always throwing the ball.
Right, and I agree with that read on Stafford. I think you're right. That's where he lands again this year. The difference with Brees is if the Lions could run the ball, they would. When you have Drew Brees, you don't really care to try that much. That's just the nature of the arm and watching the guy play.
Yeah.
It's the same reason why New England does what they do, with Tom Brady. You're just better that way. Same thing with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Their quarterbacks are just that good that you use these guys on swing passes, short passes to equate to a running game, and you make it work that way. And Stafford is not at the level of those guys.
No, obviously
so
not.
He's obviously right in the other position where he's forced to throw because, God, they don't have a running game, which they desperately wish they had. So, yeah, he's going to be in a position he's in an opportunistic position to put up upside numbers. It's just at what season does that actually happen and translate to 32 or 35 touchdowns?
True. All right. Another one that I'm higher on, obviously, and obviously you're higher on as well than the consensus is Eli Manning. We both have him that 9, 10, possibly 11 with a Kirk Cousins or a Cam Newton moving up there. The consensus is that he is quarterback number 17.
Absurd.
They have no running game. Seriously, it's again, we're going to Perkins and who's the guy they drafted out of Wayne Gallman, who they drafted out of Clemson. Those are your two running backs, and Shane Vereen, who's going to be catching the ball. So therefore, there's more pass yards for Eli Manning. Again, I think people sometimes get again, we're talking about fantasy experts, so I think expert is really loose in terms of fantasy predictions. Really, it's everyone provides data, and some people are right, some people are wrong. But in terms of Eli Manning, they add Brandon Marshall. He already has Odell Beckham. Sterling Shepard proved to be an awesome draft pick last year and had a phenomenal season as a rookie. He's only going to get better. So you have Marshall and OBJ on the outside. You have Sterling Shepard in the slot. And then you add, I want to say they drafted Evan Ingram, who will play in the slot and as a tight end. They have no running game. They have Shane Vereen to catch the ball out of the backfield. What am I missing about how Eli Manning isn't going to have to throw the ball all over the place? Yeah, he's going to throw his share of interceptions. That's what Eli Manning does. He's going to throw 35-plus TDs this season, period.
I don't see how he doesn't with that talent, and if he doesn't, I don't stage next year. So, know that this is the end of the window for Eli. So they've thrown the kitchen sink at weapons in the passing game to make the most of what they have with him and sacrificing the running game. So they don't have a running game, and that's why the Giants ultimately can't win. but the passing game looks awfully good, and anybody who ranks him at 17, worst case scenario in low production, and allowing for absolutely zero upside, because upside on Eli Manning is actually 35 touchdowns. There aren't 5 guys throwing more than 35 touchdowns.
No.
Where? Who? Now he might do it with 15 picks. He's not going to do it Tom Brady style. But if you got 40, 400 yards and 35 touchdowns with Eli Manning, that's going to be a top 7 QB, not number 17. And he's infinitely qualified to do that with the talent that's on that team.
Yep. All right. Well, and just again, that's the consensus is at 17. So there are guys that have him lower than 17.
Which is just absolutely ridiculous. That's some drunken Eagles fan, chanting, with a Jaworski jersey on. Jaws!
Unfortunately, this is Fantasy Pros consensus experts. So these are guys from like ESPN, Fantasy Pros themselves.
So it was actually Jaws who's responsible.
So I mean, these are guys from Yahoo and all that, saying this about Eli. All right, so again, we're in tier 3. I mean, for me, I didn't really have anyone that really jumped up or jumped off. Cam Newton, I'm a little lower on than most of the experts. I have him in tier 3 simply because 2 years ago was not the norm. It was the exception. Last year, he was just plain injured. I mean, the guy got the snot kicked out of him. A lot of hits to the helmet for him. So he was dealing with concussions and just wasn't ever right. And Kelvin Benjamin has blown up even more physically sideways. So it's I don't see him getting open a ton this year. So I think that Cam Newton, again, what brings him higher in terms of fantasy production is his running ability. Again, they added 2 new weapons for him in Curtis Samuel out of Ohio State and Christian McCaffrey out of Stanford. Both of those guys can run the ball, but for me, they're more pass catchers. I mean, obviously, they'll find a way to run with them. But again, I think that Cam Newton can still have enough production at the line of scrimmage to possibly push into that tier 2. I'm lower on him than most just because I think people got caught up in what happened 2 years ago.
I think the addition of Samuel and McCaffrey is worth 10 touchdowns, to be quite honest. And most of those being receiving, 70%. I think those guys are worth that much in explosiveness to that offense alone. Good point on Benjamin. Who knows? I think right now this year, I mean, I think I got to favor him towards tier 2. I think he lands somewhere in between the last 2 seasons of what we saw.
All right. And anyone else I had in this tier 3 section? Kirk Cousins. I mean, he could move up to tier 2
easily.
So I think he's one of those borderline guys, tier 2, tier 3. Again, I need to see more of where guys like Derek Carr are coming off of injury. See more of what Ben Roethlisberger can do. So we'll see. Bottom of tier 3, again, Carson Palmer. It depends on consensus has him more of a tier 4 guy for me. Around that 2021, which I can see. I almost feel like this year could be trying to go out on a final hurrah. Either he will get injured and not make it, or he could have a very, very productive season and surprise some people, kind of as a last hurrah. So I think he could go either way. That's why I put him in the middle of tier 3.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot for him. That's basically where I had him is bringing up the year. Actually, the rear, I think, on tier 3. Yeah, at the very end. simply because you got to look for the upside in the younger players that are showing it, right? So if you want a guy like if you want to look at a Mariota, if you want to think Jameis Winston's going to continue to progress, if you look at Dak Prescott, then that forces a guy like Palmer down that list.
Yep.
But clearly he's better than what you find in the next tier. I mean, I think Carson Wentz is one of those guys who he needs a good year to move into that solid tier 3, contention in his second year.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Otherwise the other guys, you know what you're getting. You know what you're getting with Andy Dalton and Tyrod Taylor. These guys are not going to be something suddenly special, this year. I mean, you have, room for 15 to 20%, differential in performance at most. And that doesn't push either of those guys into another tier of quarterback. No. Unless there's abject failure, meaning like serious season ending injury with other guys. So, the ability for them to improve does not really substantially move them up the list at all, and they continue to slide relative to other younger players.
Correct. Tyrod Taylor, who knows how much longer he's even going to be in Buffalo. Andy Dalton, is interesting. I think that he could move up to the top of tier 3. He's had productive seasons, again, that ended in injury. I want to say 2 years ago. He was, in terms of fantasy production, he was I want to say in that 5 to 7 range, until he got injured right before the playoffs. I think that he could possibly do it. Again, AJ Green has to stay healthy. John Ross would have to stay healthy. Eifert has to stay healthy, and they have to establish a run game with Giovanni Bernard, Jeremy Hill if he's still going to be there, and then the running back that they drafted. Dixon. So, again, things could work out for Andy Dalton to move up there. In terms of wins and losses, I don't count that towards fantasy, but it just looks like with the weapons that he has enough of an ability to work his way up there. Can he? Yes. Do I think that it's a strong possibility? Not really. That's why he's bottom tier 3.
Right. So, absolutely.
All right, and I'm a little down on Carson or on Dak Prescott compared to most. A lot of people have him top of tier 3. I have him towards the bottom of tier 3 simply because he had a phenomenal season last year. They lost, I want to say 1, maybe 2 pieces off that offensive line. I think it was 1 piece off that offensive line. And so that could be enough to cause a little bit of disruption in the run game, putting a little more pressure on Dak Prescott, and therefore, could bring his production down just a little bit. I could be wrong. It's happened many, many times before. So, all right, then we go. We go to the end. Our tier 4 guys. Pretty much everyone else. Carson Wentz. With the addition of Alshon Jeffrey, maybe could bring him up. Could bring him up into tier 3. Nelson Aguilar has to really explode in order to provide much more help there. He's got Jordan Matthews, who he seemed to be able to have an okay rapport with last year. Blake Bortles, people say that he could have a bounce back year this year. We'll see. It depends on how much pressure off of the passing game Leonard Fournette can take for them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bortles is going to need this is it for him. I mean, at least with Jacksonville as their starter, they have to turn the page otherwise, because he needs to not be, regressive at this point of his career, as he clearly showed, last year. I think what I really like when I look at your tier 4 is how you had Deshaun Watson higher than any of the Bears quarterbacks, which I would agree with. Like, when I looked at this, it's the first thing I scrolled to. I'm like, okay, where's Beaker? And then there it was. I'm like, man, he is dead on balls accurate with this. There is no way in hell Watson is worse than any one of those guys. So I appreciate your razor precision in that, man. That is a nice shot. You called it.
Well, I mean, obviously, Deshaun Watson. Again, I pretty much put all the rookies down in tier 4 just because we don't know what's going to come out of them. None of them are expected to be these. I mean, have it's not for sure they're going to be the starter. You've got Trubisky, who's going to have to compete with Beaker, Mike Glennon. Deshaun Watson is going to have to, beat out Tom Savage, which very well could happen. I don't even know why I didn't even know why I put Robert Griffin on there. I think it was because there was still a possibility that there was a couple teams that were interested in signing him. So obviously he'll drop off my list.
Would he retire?
Robert Griffin? No.
Yeah.
I think the Seahawks considered bringing him and Kaepernick in at the same time just to kind of see what they could get out of for a backup quarterback. And Brian Hoyer could surprise and move up. Playing in Kyle Shanahan's system in San Francisco.
He could be much. I think that guy right there, assuming he can survive.
That's the problem.
Season, if he survives the season, he's probably a tier 3 quarterback, bottom end and tier 3 quarterback.
Very well could be.
I think Deshaun Watson this year, because Houston doesn't quite have what Dallas had, could be a poor man's Dak Prescott, which means at best he could end up is a bottom end tier 3 type of guy. Theoretically, he could end up higher if he really even surprised my most bullish expectations. But do I think that Hoyer and Watson have more upside than Flacco, Tannehill, and Bortles? Yes. They have more upside relative to where you're going to find them in a draft, which is going to be generally non-existent. Somebody might draft Watson because it's a dynasty league. Nobody's drafting freaking Brian Hoyer. It's not happening. That guy's available week 1, and he's better than Alex Smith, Joe Flacco, Ryan Tannehill, Blake Bortles. You go on up the list. If he's healthy, he will beat those guys because he's proven it. He did it last year with the Bears. The Bears suck.
Yeah. Well, Alex Smith. Alex Smith actually last year had a down year in terms of running yards for him. I think he finished with 134.
Mm-hmm.
134 rushing yards, and he's one of those guys that sneaks his way up to like 350, 400 rushing yards every year. But last year he threw for where is it? Oh, I had him here just a second ago. Let's go back to there. Oops, there it is. He threw for 3,500 yards.
Oh God.
And 15 TDs.
God!
Again, they're gonna, like Kansas City always says, they're gonna rely on the run game, and especially if the guy that I'm calling as this year's Jordan Howard, if Kareem Hunt works out in Kansas City, he's going to take over Spencer Ware's job, and they're just going to lean on Hunt the entire year, kind of like the Bears did last year with Jordan Howard because they had no choice. Jordan Howard was the best guy on the field.
You're 100% right. Seriously, Alex Smith's passing numbers make me feel like I'm watching late 1970s, early 80s football. That is disgusting. Like, in this day and age, to even be considered, I think, a viable starting quarterback, if you're not throwing for more than 4,000 yards, you have no business starting. There's not a team in this league that should be producing less than, in this day and age, producing less than 4,000 yards. And this is a quote-unquote Andy Reid offense, right? Yeah, they use the running back, but less than 4,000 yards? I mean, good God, yeah, a lot of these guys, even Beaker might be better than that.
Well, Ryan Tannehill only had 29.95.
God!
But he also missed 3 games. So if you figure 3 more games, he probably finishes at the 37 mark.
Yeah, so even that, really, the 4,000 mark is a dividing line. 5,000 has been done enough times now that represents your truly great quarterbacks. But 4,500 plus is excellent.
The 5,000 though has only been done by like 3 or 4 different quarterbacks. It's just that Drew Brees has done it like 5 or 6 times.
Right. So exactly. So it shows that it's possible, right? Repeatedly possible to be done. Now there's only a few guys who can do it. But is that the guy in the arm, or is that the system you know, that they're in it, because some of these other guys, you look at Cousins' numbers last year and whatnot, these numbers, I mean, I think other quarterbacks can do it, but if you're at 3,500, there you have no chance for ever contending for that level.
Yep.
You're not going to contend for 4,500. You're going to be at best hitting 4,000 in a career year, and that is not enough.
Tom Brady threw for more yards. Here, just a second. Let me pull it up. There we expand it out. There we go. Tom Brady threw for more yards than Alex Smith with 3 less games.
Right. That's absurd.
Tom Brady, let's see. Tom Brady, if he had those 4 games at the pace that he was on, would have thrown for, what is it? Probably puts it right around 47, 48.
Okay.
So
at his age.
Yeah, so which would have put him at number 4. I mean, Aaron Rodgers only threw for 44. But yeah, you know, Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, and Drew Brees, 49, 49, and 52. So
I think I think the line is 4,000 to 4,500 is the definition of a good quarterback. A great quarterback is 4,500 to 5,000. And if you're under 4,000, you're an average quarterback. If you're under 3,500, you're a below average quarterback. If you're under 3,000, you should get another job.
Yeah, let's see. There were 13 quarterbacks that threw for 4,000 yards last year.
Okay.
The one who just missed, Derek Carr, got injured in Week 15 with 3,937.
So he had it locked up for sure.
So yeah, he had that. Blake Bortles played in 16 and threw for 39. Sam Bradford in 15 and threw for 38.77. He might have hit 4. Ben Roethlisberger missed 2 games and only threw for 38. So he would have been
easily.
He's always up there. You know, one more game with him just throwing the ball to Antonio Brown would have gotten him past 4,000 yards. So yeah, Cam Newton threw for 35, but he also ran for 359. So I mean, he tends to lead the league in rush yards. Tyrod Taylor actually did that this last year with 580. So yeah, so that's kind of where we're at in terms of the quarterbacks. That's pretty much all I've got. I will try to work into changing up, kind of going through and reevaluating some of my quarterback picks. And what I have so far. Again, if you guys want, you can go over to SkullKingFootball.com and hit the rankings tab on the top of the page, and that'll go to, those are my personal rankings. That's not a consensus of the staff or anything. Those are just mine for right now. And so those are mine for overall rankings: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, DST. So, anything else you've got, Greg?
I defy any member of the staff to justify Glennon going above Watson. There's 2 of us right here who agree with it. I defy any other member to voice in and somehow put Glennon above there. I know you'll do it just to try to trigger me. I defy you to try. That was the best pick I've ever seen, Ryan. The best pick you've ever made.
I'm glad to hear that. All right, so for real quick before we sign off, a couple things. We want to make sure that you guys know about the hashtag SkullKingNation. If you want to be a part of that, please go to, again, SkullKingFootball.com and click the Join Us tab on top. We have merch that we would love for you guys to check out. Again, you can hit the merch tab, and we've got a bunch of our shirts and stuff on sale. I want to say that today I'll leave June 1st is the last day before I take the sale off those things. So again, if you guys see this, make sure you head over to the merch tab to see if you try to get one of our shirts for while they're still on sale. We got shirts, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and cell phone covers. So there's that. We mentioned the Skull King Nation, and I think that is it. Thank you again, guys, for listening to the podcast. Thank you, all those on Facebook who joined in. I think we're like one person who's still watching right now, which is probably my wife, if she's even watching, which I don't think she is at this point, but I don't blame her. So again, thank you guys all for being part of this. We would love for you to give us a ranking or review on iTunes, to give us a like and a review on YouTube. We're also on Stitcher and Google Play, so please check those out. We would really love it if you guys could give us a ranking review on those platforms wherever you listen to our podcast or watch our podcast. And so, yeah, again, thank you again for tuning in for tonight's show. My name is Ryan, and with me tonight was Greg. And again, we hope you guys all enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you later. Hey, Skull King Nation, thank you for listening to the Skull King Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.